Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. You are in my icon corner. Today I have a special guest from another YouTube channel. This is my first YouTuber I've interviewed. And we have the Reader Steven from the channel Theopolitics. Over there on his channel, what he is doing is he's breaking down the Orthodox approach to politics, and he is most well known for his series of talks on Orthodox Monarchy, which is going to be the topic of our talk today mostly, but we'll go into some other things. I just want to say that we did have some technical difficulties. My power is currently out in my apartment here, so I'm using my cell phone right now, which doesn't have the best microphone, and he's using his, so the audio is not going to be the top quality today. But you know, we're doing the best we can.
Yep.
So so I want to say about his channel is what he does there is mostly is he reads books for you, and then he has a rare gift. He is able to synthesize the information, distill it down, and spit it back at you in an easily digestible format. So he's one of these guys who does your homework for you. And so he's basically preparing lectures for us, and it's on a very high level. It's kind of like university level talks. My information, I try to be more of a basic level. So that's what we're going to try to get to today. So welcome to the channel, Reader Steven.
Oh, thank you, brother. It's been a long time. It's good to talk to you. And yeah, I'm honored. You're the first person who has actually followed through with an interview request. So I really appreciate that. And, you know, I'm glad we were finally able to make it work, and just 20 minutes of trying to figure out the audio and stuff, but we're here, so we're good now. I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Yeah, I've been trying to get you on for months, actually. Reader Steven used to be here in Oregon. Well, he used to come to our parish here for a while, and he was driving 2 hours on Sundays, which really impressed me, to get to church. So I guess you've had another kid, is that right? You had another kid since you left here?
Yeah, we had a little girl. Let me see, make sure I get this right. Little Genevieve. She's about 9 months now. Sweet, chubby little kid. So yeah, that's good. We've been doing good. Got a good parish here in my undisclosed location. So everything's going good.
Well, congratulations on that. How many kids you have now?
This is 5.
5. That's going great. And so how have things been going on your YouTube channel? I know for a while you were doing a Patreon, right? Weren't you?
Yeah, I did. It just got to be where there were too many moving parts, because every video, for people out there who are completely new to what I do, I try to be kind of a cut above some of the orthosphere online, in that because of the nature of the information that I'm putting forward, I have my priest, my spiritual father, he checks every video before it's released on YouTube. And I understand people who can't do that or whatever. I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but that's just my personal thing that I've done, that I felt called to do. The problem with it is that I have to upload it. It's undisclosed, unlisted on YouTube. I have to send it to him. Then Patreon, for the longest time, wouldn't let me upload videos directly to Patreon. So I'd have to get an unlisted link from YouTube and then paste it over. And I had to keep up with which ones he had watched, which ones were supposed to be on Patreon. And then I had people who were giving me, very generous people who were donating tons of money to the channel, but wouldn't get on Patreon for whatever reason. And so I was having to send them a list of all the unlisted YouTube videos so they could watch them. And it just kind of got to be too much. And so I just said, you know what, just screw it. We'll go back to doing it all for free. If people want to, donate so I can get some more of these, high IQ books to review, then, I like my viewers. But the channel itself has been pretty good. I'm up to a little over 730 subscribers. I'm shooting for 1,000. And, I actually have gotten some traction as far as, I'll make it brief because I know, we're going to get into the meat of the issue soon, but
Right.
Orthodox Shahada, if you guys know the channel, they do a lot of, apologetics against Muslims. Great channel, good guys, super high IQ. Everyone should go check them out. They asked me to come on. We're going to do, an interview on political structures in Islam versus Orthodox Christianity. So I'm doing a lot of research for that. And Brother Augustine, who's also a big Orthodox YouTuber, he is working on a project. I contributed some stuff to it. He and I have had some conversations. So I did a collab with him. I'm not really at liberty to say any more than that, like what it is, but it'll be coming out soon. My name will be in it. And so I've gotten some traction. I've got some people who noticed me, and I've talked to Ubi Petrus and stuff like that, about doing work for his channel. So I've finally got enough people kind of noticing me that, I've got a little bit bigger audience now. So we'll just keep growing it, basically.
So you're putting all that Patreon on YouTube now? It's all available for free?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Every last video is on there that's been made over the past couple months that was put on Patreon is now on YouTube. It's all free.
Okay. And one more question before we get to the issue. How did you get your channel started? What's the story behind that?
So I had been Orthodox about 2 years, and I was really focusing on being taught rather than teaching. And I didn't want to do a YouTube channel, but what happened was I got a copy of Father Seraphim Rose's Orthodox Survival Course, which, I mean, I know you and other people in these circles, we've read it and studied it, and we really like Father Seraphim Rose, obviously. And then what I did was the copy that I had, which you can't find anymore, I'm not sure why. The copy that I had actually had a bibliography with all the books that Blessed Seraphim Rose was quoting and having his students read while he was alive. So I literally just went down the list and bought just about all of the books. There's a couple I still haven't gotten to, but all I did was I said, I want to expand. We have the Orthodox Survival Course. Let's kind of take every one of these books that he used, branch out, and like cover even more territory. And I put it on YouTube because I told my wife, I said, if God forbid something happened to me, I know you're not into all this stuff. She's a much more simple and humble person. I said, you can have these lectures and our kids could watch them in high school, and it would be a complete like high school or bachelor's in college level of information that they could watch, and it would all be presented from an Orthodox perspective, and it would give them a good grounding in the history of ideas. And so it went from there. I took a lot of breaks. I walked away from it and just kind of left the videos up, just depending on what my life was like at the time. And then finally, when I relaunched it, I went to my spiritual father and I just said, hey, look, I'll walk away from this. Like, I will 100% just walk, not thinking about it again. I don't care. I'm not in it for the glory. I'm not in it for the anything. I just want to get this information out there. So if you think I'm not doing a good job, just tell me and I'll stop. And he was like, as long as you do X, Y, and Z, you're good. Go for it. And he had seen some of my videos, the Monarchy series that you talked about. So since then, I've just worked with him. Everything is getting the okay from him. So by the time it gets to YouTube, it's been through a vetting process, and it's taken off. So
you definitely have a blessing for this work. I think that's a good principle to follow in the spiritual life in general, is to submit to our betters,
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
So I'll get to my first question here. So I listened to your series on monarchy. It's a timeless series. I mean, it sounds like it could have been made 50 years ago or 20 years ago or today, and it still holds true. But it's kind of a high level kind of a thing. It's kind of an intellectual exercise. Now, my viewers a lot of them are inquirers, catechumens, or newly illumined. So could you give me like an elevator pitch? Like I'm sure you've explained this to many like people who are new to the church before. Let's say you're at coffee hour and you're explaining monarchy to some inquirers. So could you give me like the elevator pitch of why I should be a monarchist, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I have to do this all the time, so I'll give you the shortest version I can. Basically, what it boils down to, and I make this pitch to the Orthodox. I don't make it to, I make it to people who are at least interested in the Orthodox Church. What it comes down to is that if we look in the Bible, if we look in Scripture, if we look in church history, it is all tied up with monarchy. Even in the period of the Judges or the period of Moses and Aaron, that people like to use is to try to kind of like weasel their way out of having to be a monarchist, you start realizing, well, wait, power was still vested in one guy who was judge, or power was still vested in one guy who was Moses. So the monarchical principle is still at work there. I would say that if you read any of the church fathers, and I mean any of the church fathers, talking about all the way up through the Bolshevik Revolution and past, no one gives the time of day to anything other than monarchy. I mean, that's really as simple as it gets. And a monarchy is an icon of God the Father and his reign over the cosmos. It's just very simple. It's very intuitive. It's something that you understand almost at like a, like my kids understand it, right? They understand that I'm the king of my household. I'm the monarch. And basically, like, that would be my pitch to people is it's in Scripture, it's in the fathers, and we find no support for any other system really anywhere. In fact, we find denunciations of democracy, communism, all these other ideologies, the French Revolution. We find denunciations from them, even from modern saints who are, like St. John the Wonder Worker. If you love St. John the Wonder Worker, and who doesn't, he was a hardcore monarchist. So was Father Seraphim Rose. Like, this is not that hard. So that would be my basic pitch, is like, this is what we believe. You can go read it for yourself. And it's really not that complicated. It's just the way things are in the church.
It sounds almost divinely revealed.
It is. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Because, and I get into this into a lot of my really niche videos, my really detailed ones, like working through the books of Francis Oakley or someone like that. Every culture, like Orthodox or not, understood that there's supposed to be somebody at the top who is this mediator between the divine reality and kind of our everyday reality. And the two ways you can do that is through government, which is a king, this father figure for the whole nation, and the priesthood, which is, the sacraments. And, sometimes different cultures, even the ancient Israelites, you'd have somebody like Melchizedek who combined both king and priest role, or sometimes, there's pagan examples of that as well. For the most part, it was usually the king and the priestly class were separate. This is just like natural. We see it across every culture for almost all of human history. And we get vestiges of it now that we see even in our modern democratic system. You see people like, for example, Trump. Trump is very like, I didn't have the wool pulled over my eyes about him. But if you saw the way people supported him, it was very much not, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but it was like a cult of personality. He was the strong man that you could look up to and feel like he was going to take care of business, and he was going to cut through the red tape, and he was going to take care of the people. That's what the monarch is supposed to do. Like, that's the whole point, is that he's the father figure that everyone looks up to and goes, okay, if you mess with us, like, our dad's coming for you, basically, and he's going to lead the army into battle. He's going to sacrifice himself. He's going to take on the responsibility for his nation. And it's very simple. It's very intuitive. It would have been complete common sense to anyone living even 100 years ago. You know, most of Europe was monarchist, except for like France. Like France was the only country that didn't have a king at the start of World War One. You know, um, yeah. So it's like France and the United States, like that's it, and everybody else was a monarchy. Russia, Germany, Austro-Hungary, Britain. You know, everybody. So.
Okay, so this now I'm kind of want to go on a little bit of a tangent here. So you have the king on top.
Mm-hmm.
So what about the rest of the structure? Is that somehow predetermined, or is that variable from country to country? How about the rest of the, the police and the judge, all that, everything else that must follow? I mean, we can't just have one person. There's got to be a government, right? I mean, is there a natural structure to that too, or?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of monarchy is that you have, the one guy who's at the top and his job is to mediate, but um, just like God has his ministers, so his angels and saints and all these other things that are in this layered hierarchy, from God on down to us, the king as an icon of God works the same way. So he has ministers. This is why you have Ministry of Defense, Ministry of this, Ministry of that. It's literally the exact same principle. And now the beautiful thing about it is that monarchy is a personal form of government. So it's not, I pledge allegiance to the Constitution. It's no, that guy right there, that is my the principle on which my government is founded. It's actually that guy right there. What that does is that it allows you to structure the hierarchy underneath him can be fashioned in almost any way you can conceive, based on your culture, based on historically, based on your religious convictions. You could really structure everything in many, many different ways. So, for example, some nations like England or France had a very strong noble class, like an aristocracy. Then you had other places like Russia that didn't have that. Or if they ever did kind of gain the ascendancy, they were just oligarchs who oppressed everybody, and the czar had to come in and take care of business and restructure things. But the point is that monarchy is extremely personal, and it's tailored, like the way it works out is tailored to each individual people group. That's, I think, people don't realize that. They think it's just a tyrant who sits up there and hands down orders from on high. But the king is in a personal relationship with every single one of his subjects. So the way he relates to them is not through the mechanism of bureaucracy or impersonal government. It's, like any citizen in a monarchy, in the Bible, for example, Solomon is able to judge the cases. Anyone can have their case heard before Solomon, right? So the women come and, the two women with the baby that they're fighting over, this is the most famous example. But literally anyone could show up. He would just spend like most of his time was literally spent as a judge, interacting one-on-one with people to judge their cases. This happened with Tsar Nicholas II. Anyone could walk up to the Russian Tsar and ask for a hearing. Paul does this, ironically, with Nero. Like, Nero's a tyrant. Nero's a horrible figure. And yet even he had to grant a judgment to Paul, and Paul was able to, had his expenses paid and had Roman military protection to be taken to Italy and judged by the emperor. And actually he was let off. He was let off the first time. I mean, this is all in the scripture, right? So it's personal. It's catered to each individual people group, the way they relate to each other, and it's the way they want to structure their society under the king. That's totally up to them. It's customizable.
Beautiful. Okay, so now let's say I'm convinced now that I'm identifying as a monarchist now, but I look around. What can we start a monarchy here? Like, how is it going to get? What are the realistic chances that we might be able? How are you going to start a monarchy? What's the realistic steps that you understand my question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most common ones I get. So everybody there's two groups of people. who pose that question. One group is, the honest person, like us, the way we're interacting, which is like, man, I really want this. How do I make this happen? The other group of people that I think is much more interesting is the group of people that have lost the argument, don't want to give up. And so they just basically say, well, you're irrelevant. How in the world are you going to start a monarchy in the United States? There's multiple options. There's multiple ways forward. The biggest one, the most important one, is that we need to first convert the culture. We need to make the culture Orthodox. If we make the culture Orthodox and get it to a certain tipping point, the monarchy will happen of itself. Like that is my firm conviction. If God gives us enough time to repent, and so in other words, we just need to be Orthodox. We need to do what we're already doing, trying to convert people, trying to build up Orthodox families and Orthodox communities and Orthodox parishes. And over time, if we're worthy, God will give us a monarch. This is like asking, if you'd come up to a first century Christian and said, hey, what do you mean you're going to have like an Orthodox monarch of the Roman Empire? Get out of here. You've lost your mind. And they say, well, we just keep doing this. We just keep doing what we're doing. We're being witnesses in the culture. And eventually they gain so much momentum and sacrifice themselves and are martyred that they redeem the Roman Empire by their blood. And Christ converts Constantine, and Constantine sets in motion the Christianization of the empire. So, but it took 300 years. And that's what everybody, if you're a monarchist, you learn to be really patient. So like being a monarchist goes along with all the Orthodox virtues. So submission to a hierarch, understanding that there are people who are above you, who have authority, patience, because you might get a bad king as judgment from God, and you need to bear with that patiently, unless it just gets to such an extreme degree that action needs to be taken, which is pretty rare. But you've got to develop all these virtues first in order for you to be able to make an Orthodox monarchy work. So we got to change the culture. The other possible way that we could get one faster, and when I say we, it's kind of a relative term. The thing that I think is going to happen, and I don't necessarily advocate for this, and I certainly don't believe anyone should try to speed it up, but America is balkanizing. Every day, the United States just polarizes. Different portions of the country don't get along with each other at all. And so what I see in that is that we may not have to convert the entire country. We may end up converting one portion of the country. And when things fall apart, we'll be able to carve out a space where there's already enough Orthodox Christians that we can have a monarchy of, say, let's just use an example. Let's say, there's a huge Slavic Orthodox population in Pennsylvania, which there is. Maybe the western half of Pennsylvania breaks away and has an Orthodox king, right? And like maybe somewhere else, there's another big Orthodox population, some island somewhere, a couple thousand people, and they break away and they have an Orthodox king. Like that's another possibility, which I think will present itself as America kind of eats itself from the inside. We'll have opportunities like that, and we need to be ready to step forward and seize it.
Yeah, I've heard that argument before, that we wait for things to fall apart, so to speak, which seems to be happening. Definitely things are falling apart.
Yeah, you don't. Here's the thing: the bad guys don't get along with each other. So the evil people will cut each other's throats, and then if we just persevere, we'll be there to pick up the pieces.
Okay, so the flips. I guess the other side of that question would be: it seems more natural that if a monarchy was to be established, that it would happen in Russia to me, because it's already an Orthodox culture, nation, so forth. You think wouldn't that be more like a likely scenario?
Yeah, I think they're going to be the first place that gets one. And I think, honestly, it could be, the the Tsarist party in Russia is extremely strong. They make up, right now, they're a little over a quarter of the population, but their biggest foothold is actually among young people. Like, young people are monarchist in Russia to a degree that would just blow your mind. So it's 28% of the general population, but it's probably more like 45% of young people, depending on which poll or statistics you look at. They have representatives in the Duma from the Tsarist party. There are still Romanovs around who would make decent candidates for Tsar. So I think that right now there's a transition which is happening, which is they have this quasi-monarchical figure, obviously, who's in charge now, who does a lot of good things and has been supporting the church. And he is sort of, I think, once him and maybe whoever comes after him have finished this transitionary period and Russia has repented and come more out of the sins of communism that, you know, they were under for 80 years, the reign of Antichrist, I think that God will reward them. The first place we will see an Orthodox monarchy reestablished will be in Russia, and I think it could be within our lifetimes. And if that happens, and I'm not like that's not pie in the sky. Like, that's a very conservative estimate for me. It could happen tomorrow. I think, and here's the big thing: is once that happens, that opens up the dialogue, right? So that, you know, we can point to that and say, look, see. You know, to the Orthodox here in America, who unfortunately, I'd say the majority of people who identify as Orthodox in America are not monarchists. And that's one of our big problems. And that's why I started my channel. So once one country gets it, it's going to be like a domino effect. People are going to be able to point and say, look, see, they have an Orthodox monarch. You see how good things are over there? You know.
Aren't there some prophecies about the establishment of a what do you know about that?
There's my spiritual father is really into kind of like the prophecies of like the six-fingered king in Greece. There's not a whole lot that's available in English that's any good. But like Saint Paisios the New of Mount Athos, he talked about, you know, the sleeping king who's going to be like reawakened, kind of like an Arthur legend, you know, who in the last days God will raise up to save Greece from the Antichrist. The Russians have similar prophecies. I think Serbia does. And if you think about it, in England, of course, they have the legend of King Arthur, and King Arthur is sleeping until England needs him again, right? Well, without getting into the weeds of whether Arthur was a historical figure or not, which I think he was, and I have reasons for that I'm going to cover on my channel, hopefully coming up soon in the next couple months. But Arthur would have been around, obviously, way before the schism. He would have been Orthodox. And so that's another example of like that an Orthodox monarch possibly, you know, just sleeping and then being raised from the dead at the end of time to save his people, to return them to orthodoxy. So do I go out and make a bunch of predictions and like tell you what year it's going to happen, or like stake, you know, my whole faith on it? No, because I just don't know enough. And I'm not enlightened enough spiritually to like make that call. But I've seen a lot of interesting stuff about it. And you could go down that rabbit trail forever. So I know it's out there. I just don't know like a ton of details. There's just not a lot of stuff in English. That's what it boils down to.
Okay. I don't know. It seems like I heard something recently about the global, you know, like the Antichrist one world government is going to rule the whole world except Russia. Did you hear that? Something about that recently?
There's a prophecy of Saint Seraphim of Sarov. I think this is what it's referencing. He says the forces of Antichrist will come and will invade or whatever, but they will not be able to take Divyevo, which is where Sarov, his area. So in other words, the forces of Antichrist will not overcome and will not be able to take the territory of Russia, at least certain parts of it. So there will always be a remnant. The Georgians also have a prophecy that I heard about, like in a news clip, just one of their priests talking. He's like, Georgia is a holy country, and it will stand, and it will survive Antichrist, and like we won't lose the war to Antichrist. So there's certain like local prophecies. Again, what's in English that we have easy access to? Not a lot, but you can find stuff here and there from saints. Saint Paisios has stuff about that too, where like Greece will get a king again, and the king will lead them into battle, and 1/3 of the Turks will be killed, 1/3 will emigrate, and 1/3 will become Christian. Constantinople will be retaken. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff out there floating around that I put a lot of stock in it. I just I'm not. That's an area I haven't delved as much into as I should, basically.
Okay. This is a little bit of a pivot. So what do you think about participation in our current system? Is it worth voting? How much stock do you put in, participation in democracy?
If you vote for Kanye West, it's okay. That's what I did. Because
4 years ago, you voted
yeah,
for
yeah.
Yay?
Oh yeah, I had the shirt and everything. Yeah, yay, that's right. I forgot. I did it partly because we lived in Washington State at the time, and so because of the Electoral College, um, it's a blue state. It was going to go blue, and the electoral votes were going to go to Biden anyways. So I kind of just didn't care. And Ye is extremely entertaining and about 85% right. so I followed him. I put the shirt on and like I didn't campaign for him per se, but when people saw me wearing the shirt, like I had a whole spiel. I'd be like, look, man, he's not the president we need. He's the president we deserve, and people kind of walk away scratching their heads. Okay. So have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
No, I've heard about it many times. Maybe I should see it.
Okay. So Idiocracy, it's a great movie. Be warned, there's a lot of crude stuff in it, but in the future, the president is played by Terry Crews, and Terry Crews in that movie is basically my idea of what Kanye would be if he became president, and it would make politics so much more interesting, and just outlandish. Because that's the thing is, like, at this point, if you're participating in the system, you really should be doing it kind of to, like, I don't want to necessarily say to troll, but to like kind of be outlandish and like make points and like, spawn leftist tears. Like, we know we're not going to get anything out of it. So don't like invest your whole life in it. Don't like, go out and become part of the RNC or the DNC or whatever. But at the same time, like, there are certain avenues there open to, maybe open people's minds to different ways of thinking and to move the culture gradually in the right direction. Now, what that exact forum looks like, I don't know. I'm pretty hands off. Like, every once in a while, someone like Ye comes along and just completely disrupts the narrative. So I jump behind him and ride the wagon as long as I can, and just kind of have fun along the way. But as far as like serious political commitments, maybe on the local level, like your sheriff and stuff like that, that's important. That we should be absolutely involved in. We need more Orthodox police officers. We need more Orthodox city councilmen and sheriffs. That's a good way that we can really make things happen, to carve out, to have people in a position of authority who are in line with the faith, so that when things do fall apart, the community, even the non-Orthodox, can look and say, okay, well, this person is in a position of authority, maybe, and give more credence to whatever system we're going to set up after, after whatever happens.
Okay. Now, lately, there's been this, a lot of news online about this movement called Christian nationalism. I guess Andrew Torba printed a book about called Christian nationalism. Can I get your take on that movement?
Yeah. So Brother Augustine did a really good video analyzing that book. I would recommend that people go watch that.
Okay.
It's not very long. It's like 40 minutes or something. But what I would say, just kind of in passing, is the Christian nationalism in this case. Well, okay, let me put it this way. There was an event maybe a couple weeks ago where they had one of these explicitly Christian nationalist events in Pennsylvania, I think. And they had all the speakers there. First guy gets up, and he's a Baptist pastor. And for some reason, he launches into this huge anti-Catholic tirade. He's just like, if you believe that there's a man called the Pope between you and Jesus who you need to obey to get to heaven, you're not going. You know, he just went on this massive, no, whatever, I don't care. But then the next speaker after him was General Mike Flynn, who also identifies as a Christian nationalist and is part of the same movement. And General Mike Flynn gets up and goes, so I'm Catholic. And that's how he starts his speech. And so that's my problem. It's the same problem with American politics in general, is
okay.
You cannot have, like, once your movement becomes so broad that you're allowing other confessions in, it's over, because we don't agree with each other.
Okay.
So, you know, like, okay, so like if we had like on, you know, and I don't want to get either of us kicked off YouTube for using the wrong buzzword, but the killing of infants, which, you know, thankfully is being overturned, and we should definitely be involved with that. And we can work with the Protestants, and we can work with the Catholics. And I mean, sheesh, I'll work with the Freemason on that if they just happen to line up on the issue. But we have to do sort of like, even there, we've got to be witnessing for the Orthodox faith. Actually, funny enough, we had before Roe v. Wade was overturned, we had an event for, which accidentally turned into like a perfect blueprint of what the Orthodox need to do on issues like that relating to, say, Christian nationalism. If we're going to participate in these events, if we're going to stand together to march for traditional values or whatever, we've got to make sure that we're sending the correct message, which is that we are here on our own terms. We're here on our own terms. You know, we're not validating these other groups. You know, even though we're temporarily allied, like, our long-term goal is to make our church more visible and more successful. So this actually worked out. I need to find the clip. I've got it somewhere, and I'll put it on YouTube. But well, no, because then I would dox myself. But I'll just tell you what happened. So there was this big pro-life march, and we were all out there. There were probably about 500-600 people, and you know, my priest is like on the board of the pro-life committee and whatever for our city, and we marched around. Well, the Orthodox, there were maybe like 15 or 20 of us there. So we were a small part of the crowd, but, you know, like, I'm a reader. We had other readers show up, you know, and we had a priest there and stuff. So we all wore our cassocks. We brought icons. We brought banners. You know, everybody carried an icon. We had these giant, you know, flags with the Theopolitics on them. And because of that, when we got done with the march, the media finally showed up, and they instantly, you know, they start looking out in this crowd, and then they see us, and they instantly gravitate towards us. So they came up, and I actually gave an interview with them, you know, kind of calling out the hypocrisy of the left and talking about the issue. Oh, excuse me. And what happened was, it got on the news, and if you watch the news clip, it looks like the Orthodox were like 75% of the march, and we're like the spokesman for the march, even though we were like, you know, 5% of the actual people who were there. And it's just one of those moments where it's like, okay, you step up. You know, if they pass the microphone to me, I'm not handing it off to Pastor Billy Bob and being like, oh no, he organized the march. It's like, no, dude, I'm going to represent the Orthodox Church right here, right now. We're getting front page coverage. We're here on our own terms. We would do this even if no one else was here to march with us. You know, that kind of thing. So Christian
Okay.
nationalism, sorry, that's a huge digression, but Christian nationalism fails to take into account the real differences between people. It fails to take into account the real differences. Like you can't, we've seen this, over the culture war of the past 50, 60 years, broad based social values and stuff like that, that is not enough to sustain a movement for the most part. So we're here for the Orthodox Church. If other people want to kind of come along and ally with us temporarily, that's fine. That's good. But we've got to be very careful and not buy into, we can't just do something out of expediency. I'll put it that way. That's the best way to put it.
Okay.
And I think Christian nationalism does that. It tries to bring in too many people and sort of cobble them together, and it just doesn't really work,
Okay. So you have a 3-part series on monarchy in your YouTube channel, and I will direct people for fuller treatment of this issue. I would direct people to his YouTube channel, which is called Theopolitics, and there's a link in the description below. Now about that series, I have a question. Is there anything, if you were to redo that series, is there anything you felt like you left out or that you might have wanted to add or change in that series?
Yeah, I mean, this is the big issue that I've had, and it's actually caused me to like take breaks from the channel several times, is that you think you have mastered the subject, and then as soon as you put your content out, like, the next day you find a whole nother avenue of thought that you hadn't considered, that it's kind of like, oh, I wish I had put that in there. I won't, I mean, I would say that I think the series is good as it stands. It's just, it wasn't long enough to address every single issue. And so that's why I just kept making videos and we kept going deeper and deeper. Did the 10-part series on sacred monarchy, which gets really deep into some of the issues. And the bigger thing I think too is that it doesn't cover any specific monarchs, really. So there's a lot of questions that people want to ask, who are really interested. Things like, well, how do we know when a king can be overthrown for whatever reason? What are the reasons that justify it? Why, what makes a king legitimate or not? What do you do if a king dies without an heir? So I didn't get to any of those issues, and I'm still working through some of those. So I just didn't get to cover like some of the more nitty gritty questions, but I'm trying to do that in other videos as I go along.
Okay. All right. So we have some homework for people to do. They should watch the movie Idiocracy. They should listen to Brother Augustine's Christian Nationalism. They need to go and watch the Monarchy series or other videos on Theopolitics. Do you have anything you want to say about how people can find you or anything else? I mean, you have your YouTube channel. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I'm not really on anything else. I don't do social media. I haven't done it for years just because it's not productive for me.
Okay.
I typically respond to my YouTube comments within a day or so. I keep track of them. So that's a good way to kind of like, if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, like just, leave me a YouTube comment or something and, let me know you're wanting to talk more, and I'll give you my phone number or something. I've done that for people before. I'm not worried about that. And, or we can use Signal or, stuff. So it's basically just whoever wants to just reach out to me, YouTube comment, or, whatever. I'm pretty approachable. So if you leave me a YouTube comment, that's probably the fastest way that I'll get to you, and we can set something up.
All right. And now for those people watching live, this is your opportunity to ask a question, but because we're coming to the end of our interview here, so I guess if there's no other questions, I think we're gonna have to. I think we'll end our interview. So thank you. This has been great. Thank you so much for coming on here. And
Oh, it's been great, man.
good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, great interview. So good luck to you with your future endeavors.
You too, brother. I been watching your stuff, and I've seen your subscribers finally start to go up. You're at like what, over 400 now?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. When we first started talking, you had like maybe 100. So that's really good. We've both actually like significantly increased our viewership. So that's good. We'll just keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll all get there together.
Yeah, I think if you just keep, the idea is just to keep coming out with more is the idea. So
exactly.
All
Wake
right,
more people up.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys in 5 more days because I'm streaming every 5th day. All right. Goodbye.
All right.